the girl said to her mother. Dad is going to a hotel with another woman. Then the girl told her father that her mother wanted to leave her behind to go on a date with another man. Hearing this, the woman erupted in anger and yelled at her. But the girl had no idea what she did wrong. She had only spoken out the thoughts hidden in their hearts. The woman packed her bags and prepared to leave. The girl ran up and hugged her mother, but she was shoved aside without hesitation. The girl's name was Haruka. Since she was young, she had been able to see the thoughts inside people's minds. So she never lost at rock, paper, scissors at school. Even when the girls whispered about their crushes, she could instantly see who each girl liked. And she said it out loud, but Haruka had no idea that saying those things would embarrass them deeply. Because of that, no one at school wanted to go near her. Her mother took her to all kinds of hospitals, but no one could find anything wrong with her. So both her father and mother ended up leaving her. Her only two good friends left her as well. She had no choice. Haruka had to transfer to a new class, but the unfriendly thoughts of her teacher and classmates were heard clearly by her again. Only one boy named Yoshihisa paid no attention to her arrival, but every thought running through Yoshihisa's mind was already known to Haruka. A girl came over to invite Yoshihisa to her house to hang out, but he turned her down immediately, while rejecting her. Yoshihisa was thinking, it must be something special about me that attracted her, but Haruka exposed his thoughts on the spot. Haruka told him that the girl had no idea what his special traits were. In the days that followed, fewer and fewer classmates were willing to stay near Haruka. Seeing her alone and pitiful, Yoshihisa walked over and sat in front of her during lunch to keep her company, but he was quickly distracted by her beautifully prepared meal. He couldn't help thinking, this must taste amazing. Haruka immediately told him, if you want to eat it, go ahead. Only then did Yoshihisa realize that Haruka really could read minds just like the classmates said. Yoshihisa quietly told Haruka that she needed to hold back on her mind reading a little, or she would end up with no friends. Even though he said that, he didn't distance himself from her at all. Every time he saw Haruka alone, he would take the initiative to hang out with her, but Haruka refused to accept his kindness. She believed that one day, he would leave her too because of her ability. Yoshihisa, however, thought her mind-reading ability was incredibly cool. Haruka didn't agree. She felt that this ability had only made her lonely. Even her own parents had distanced themselves from her. Upset, Haruka turned around to leave, but suddenly she felt Yoshihisa thinking something wicked. She rushed forward to stop him. That night, Haruka returned home and thought back on everything. For the first time in her life, someone had willingly approached her and tried to be her friend. The next day, the two ran into each other again. While crossing the street together, Haruka suddenly tackled Yoshihisa to the ground. She had read the truck driver's thoughts. He was planning to run the red light. Haruka explained to Yoshihisa that she always unconsciously read the thoughts of everyone around her. Before she could finish, Yoshihisa interrupted her. He noticed her scraped knee and decided to take her home. But when Haruka mentioned her family, she fell into deep guilt again because she couldn't control her mind-reading ability. She felt she had hurt everyone around her, so Haruka didn't want Yoshihisa to get close to her. She believed that no matter who it was, they would eventually leave her. If that was going to happen, then it was better to be alone from the start. Yoshihisa grabbed Haruka's arm and told her, no matter what happens, he'll always be with her. Haruka was overwhelmed by his words. Yoshihisa reached out to pat her head to comfort her, but Haruka immediately picked up on the wicked thoughts in his mind. Yoshihisa awkwardly explained that men's instincts could be a little ugly, and he was simply being honest about it. The playful moment between them made Moritani, who liked Yoshihisa, burn with jealousy, and she was already plotting in her heart to mess with Haruka. At that moment, a blue-haired girl walked over. She suddenly scooped Haruka up in her arms. She was Yuriko, the president of the school's ESP research club. She specialized in finding people with supernatural abilities to study. After saying that, she carried Haruka and prepared to leave, but Yoshihisa blocked her path. Haruka thought he was coming to save her, but Yoshihisa simply wanted to ask Yuriko if he could join the research club. However, not just anyone could join the research club. Yuriko asked him what kind of psychic ability he had. Yoshihisa confidently claimed that he possessed the power of wild imagination. Yuriko didn't really understand what that meant, but she still accepted him. When the three arrived at the club room, the bizarre shapes of the building scared Haruka. Just as she was about to run away, Yuriko grabbed her back. Besides Yuriko and Haruka, The research club also had a vice president named Daichi, who wasn't even a meter tall. Once everyone was present, the new members had to fill out a profile card. Yoshihisa stared at the special ability section, unsure of what to write, but when his eyes landed on the section that said abilities you want to learn, his eyes lit up instantly. What he wanted most, of course, was X-ray vision, and if he could choose one more, it would definitely be the ability to make girls' skirts 10 centimeters shorter. Yuriko explained that the main purpose of the research club was to scientifically prove the existence of psychic abilities by gaining society's recognition. They could also protect psychic users from discrimination, but Haruka didn't want to prove she had any abilities at all. Meanwhile, Yoshihisa began using his so-called imagination ability again, but everything he did was actually to keep Haruka from feeling nervous. Just then, Haruka suddenly sensed a terrifying image flash through Yuriko's mind. Yuriko had no choice but to explain her story. The reason she was obsessed with researching psychic abilities was because of her mother. Her mother had clairvoyance. She often used her gift to help the police search for missing people. But one day, people suddenly turned on her, calling her a fraud who made everything up. Unable to handle the pressure, she ultimately chose to take her own life. Her mother's death left a deep shadow on Yuriko's childhood. She vowed to prove that psychic abilities were real. That was why she founded the ESP Research Club. And now, she had finally found a real psychic Haruka to make people acknowledge the existence of psychic powers. Yuriko came up with an idea. She wanted Haruka to use her abilities for fortune-telling, but Haruka had already been shunned and bullied by her classmates, so she couldn't show her face openly. Yuriko already had a solution. She decided to form a two-girl fortune-telling duo with Haruka. Then she immediately sent Yoshihisa and Daichi out to hand out flyers. Soon, they finally welcomed their first customer. Many students gathered around to watch. Yuriko began the fortune-telling right away, but everything she said was completely wrong. She even claimed that the girl liked another girl. Confused, Yuriko looked to Haruka. Haruka told her that there were too many people around, and she couldn't see the customer's face. So her mind reading was mixed up with everyone else's thoughts. So, Haruka stepped forward and did the fortune-telling herself. This time, she was completely accurate. More and more people came to Haruka for readings, but this also angered Moritani, the girl who liked Yoshihisa. She demanded Haruka to read her fortune, but in her heart, she was cursing Haruka, calling her a monster. The two girls standing beside Moritani were also silently hurling insults in their minds. Haruka couldn't take it anymore. She started vomiting on the spot. After that day, Haruka was bullied again. Her textbooks were thrown into the trash. Cruel notes were stuck onto her back. Haruka could only endure it quietly. Yoshihisa was furious. He grabbed the insulting notes and stormed into the classroom. He walked straight up to Moritani. In front of everyone, he said Moritani's heart was filthy enough to make someone vomit. Haruka heard everything from outside the door. Moritani couldn't understand why Yoshihisa would defend that monster girl. Yoshihisa shouted back that it was because he liked her. Hearing this, Haruka blushed and hid inside a box, but Yoshihisa had no idea why she suddenly hid. Haruka tried to run away, but Yuriko grabbed her tightly. She apologized to Haruka, saying that her idea was what caused Haruka to get hurt. Seeing the two hugging, Yoshihisa couldn't help but start imagining things again. Their closeness quickly became a hot topic in the class. The students wrote both of their names on the chalkboard. Yoshihisa loudly declared that honesty matters, and filled the board with drawn hearts. The two agreed to go to the research club together, but Yoshihisa had something urgent to take care of. So Haruka went to the club alone. Only Daichi was there. It was Haruka's first time being alone with him. She didn't know anything about his personality. Suddenly, Daichi gave a creepy smile. Haruka immediately read his thoughts. He wanted to tie her up and dissect her for research. Haruka trembled in fear. Thankfully, Yuriko and Yoshihisa arrived just in time. They immediately tied Daichi up. In truth, Daichi only wanted to play a prank on Haruka. He meant no real harm, but this incident made Yoshihisa even more determined to protect Haruka. However, Moritani, who came from a martial arts family, had no intention of letting this go. Her family's apprentices saw her anger and asked what happened. They told her that if it would make her feel better, they were willing to do anything. Meanwhile, Yoshihisa was still trying to decide what to eat for lunch the next day. Haruka shyly said she could make lunch for him. Yoshihisa jumped with excitement. After they said goodbye, Haruka didn't notice several tall figures lurking behind her, watching Yoshihisa. On his way home, Yoshihisa was suddenly stopped by a group of people. Moritani had lied and told them that Yoshihisa constantly harassed her. These people had come to teach him a lesson. The next day, Haruka arrived with the lunch she made, happily waiting for Yoshihisa, but the teacher informed her that he'd had an accident. At that moment, she clearly heard the guilt in Moritani's mind. Haruka immediately ran to the hospital, seeing that his injuries weren't serious. She finally breathed a sigh of relief, but when Haruka learned that he got hurt because of her, she blamed herself even more. She thought about how she had always caused trouble for people since she was little, and now, she had even gotten Yoshihisa hurt. The more she thought about it, the more devastated she felt. Her guilt never faded. Yoshihisa recovered quickly and was discharged, but Haruka still believed she was a curse. She secretly applied for a transfer. She changed her phone number. She moved to a new place. On the surface, Yoshihisa still flirted with girls as usual, but deep down, he never stopped thinking about Haruka. Yuriko grabbed him without a word. Then the three decided to search for Haruka together. Daichi immediately pulled up surveillance footage. They hurried to the last place Haruka appeared in the recordings, but because they hadn't booked a hotel, they were forced to wander the streets. With help from a police officer, they found a temple in the mountains where they could spend the night. The monk warmly welcomed them. He said he was very interested in their research club. He explained that many years ago, he had met a psychic as well. He then brought the three to the room where that psychic had once stayed. There, they found a photograph of Haruka. The monk said that he would take them to find her the next day. The next day, the monk led them to Haruka's family villa. Her grandfather, Zenzo, was already waiting at the door. Zenzo immediately asked Yoshihisa how far things had progressed between him and his granddaughter. Yoshihisa admitted that he simply liked teasing Haruka and making her blush. Right then, Haruka pushed the door open and walked in. Seeing everyone there, she turned around and ran. She hid herself in a corner. At that moment, Yoshihisa's longing for her was heard clearly through Haruka's mind reading. It moved her to tears. She finally gathered the courage to come out. Yuriko immediately ran over and hugged her. Daichi took the chance to catch her with a net, but Haruka still believed that as long as she disappeared, Yoshihisa wouldn't get hurt again, and his life could return to normal. But Yoshihisa firmly told her that without her, his life would have no meaning at all. And so, they returned to their school life once again, because Yoshihisa chose Haruka. Moritani was depressed for a while, but Haruka's sincerity and cuteness soon melted her hostility. Haruka invited her to join the research club. Yuriko also welcomed her warmly. However, the research club had a strict rule. You had to possess some kind of special ability to join. For example, Haruka's mind reading and Yoshihisa's fantasy syndrome. Moritani immediately claimed she had a shocking superpower. Everyone was intrigued by this ability. Under everyone's urging, Moritani decided to demonstrate her power. A row of candles was neatly lined up. She took her stance, threw a strong punch, and the candles actually went out. And just like that, Moritani officially became a member of the research club. Seeing her growing team, Yuriko smiled with satisfaction. Moritani then asked if she could see Yuriko's abilities. Yuriko laughed and explained that her role was more like a commander. Creating effective plans was her most important ability. As president of the research club, she felt the first step was to organize a team-building event to strengthen their unity, and the location would be Haruka's new home. The next day, they arrived at Haruka's house. The girls each showed off their cooking skills. Watching Haruka in an apron, Yoshihisa began fantasizing again. He couldn't help it. In his eyes, girls in aprons were the most charming. The team-building day ended perfectly with a lively group photo. Exhausted, everyone soon drifted into sleep. Recently, a series of murders targeting high school girls has been occurring around the school. A policewoman named Sato is conducting routine investigations around the campus. She happens to run into Haruka and her group. A few days ago, Haruka had brushed past the killer. She read the killer's terrifying thoughts, but she doesn't know exactly who the killer is, and no one would believe that mind reading even exists, so Haruka decides to keep it to herself for now. During the break, the students are all talking about the serial killer case. Meanwhile, Haruka is still hesitating about whether to tell the police. Moritani comforts her and says the police will handle the investigation, and besides, Haruka doesn't even know what the killer looks like. At that moment, two other girls overhear their conversation. They ask Haruka if she has seen the killer. That single question instantly draws the attention of the entire class. Even though Moritani tries her best to explain, She can't stop the rumors from spreading throughout the school. Everyone starts saying that Haruka saw the killer, but is deliberately hiding the truth from the police out of fear of revenge. Just like that, Haruka once again becomes the villain in her classmates' eyes. The other members of the research club all feel sorry for Haruka. Yuriko suggests that the best way to stop the rumors is for them to catch the killer themselves, but Yoshihisa quickly rejects the idea. It's far too dangerous. Moritani feels deeply guilty toward Haruka, so when Haruka's grandfather invites everyone over for dinner, she leaves early out of guilt, while the others are happily looking forward to the dinner. Someone's arrival suddenly ruins the mood. It's Haruka's mother Kumiko. Haruka is too scared to face her. She has so many things she wants to say to her mother, but at this moment, she can't say a single word. The man standing next to Kumiko suddenly greets them. Haruka instinctively begins to read his thoughts. This makes Kumiko furious. She loudly scolds Haruka. Haruka is so frightened that she steps back again and again. At that moment, the friends behind her give her courage. Their encouragement gives Haruka the strength to step forward. She finally says what she has always wanted to tell her mother. She has made friends, but Kumiko warns her to be careful, or those friends will all disappear eventually. Haruka is deeply hurt. At that moment, Yoshihisa steps in. He tells Kumiko that he will never leave Haruka. After saying that, he even tries to kiss Haruka. This makes Kumiko furious. She throws him to the ground. Then she tells Haruka to stay away from him. With that, she turns and leaves. The next morning on the way to school, Haruka finds the school surrounded by reporters. Using her mind reading, she learns that Moritani has been arrested. At the same time, in the interrogation room, Moritani seems to have gone through something terrifying. Just as she is about to confess, Yoshihisa's shouting suddenly echoes from outside the room. That instantly brings Moritani back to her senses. At the same time, Yoshihisa and Haruka are thrown out. Daichi thinks they acted too impulsively, but Haruka is extremely worried about Moritani. Just when they don't know what to do, Officer Sato calls them over. Moritani now looks much more relaxed. She begins to explain what really happened. It turns out that Moritani believes the rumors about Haruka were caused by her, so she went around trying to explain things to their classmates one by one, but no one would listen to her. So Moritani started following her classmates, trying to explain, but then she discovered one of them had been attacked by the killer, and since she was the only one at the scene, she was arrested as a suspect. Haruka knows that Moritani ended up like this because of her, so she steps forward decisively and tells the police that Moritani is not the killer. She says she has seen the real killer's thoughts through mind reading, but the police don't believe her. Yuriko suggests that Haruka demonstrate her ability. Haruka immediately says that the male officer has been struggling to use the bathroom lately because of hemorrhoids. Although the police start to believe her mind reading, it still can't be used as evidence. The group leaves the station feeling disappointed. At that moment, Yuriko suggests again that they could catch the killer themselves, but Yoshihisa steps in to oppose it. He knows how scared Haruka really is. He doesn't want her to put herself in danger, but Haruka insists on going to find the killer. The two of them end up arguing. Yoshihisa storms off in anger. However, that very night, the killer strikes again. The next day, Moritani, who had been falsely accused, is released. After the group reunites, they immediately begin discussing how to find the killer, but that night, Haruka receives a call from Sato. Sato tells them that the killer is extremely dangerous. She doesn't want them to keep investigating, and she warns them to never go to an alley called Nick Home. It's very dangerous there, but Yuriko sees this as an opportunity, so everyone decides to split up. That night, Haruka and the others walk near the alley. Suddenly, Haruka reads the killer's thoughts, but because the distance is too far, she can't tell who the killer actually is. Meanwhile, Yuriko walks alone into the alley. She is suddenly attacked. At a critical moment, Daichi saves her. Moritani takes the chance to attack the killer, but after only a few exchanges, she is knocked flying. Haruka also rushes over, just as the killer is about to attack her. A few passers-by appear behind Haruka. The killer has no choice but to flee immediately. In the hospital room, Daichi, who was beaten badly, is still unconscious. Haruka feels extremely guilty. She quietly leaves on her own. She wanders the streets aimlessly. Without realizing it, she arrives at a park. Suddenly, someone appears behind her. Haruka turns around and sees that it's Officer Sato. Sato invites Haruka to her home under the pretense of treating her wounds. After bandaging Haruka's injuries, Sato goes into the kitchen to prepare dinner. Haruka sends a message to her friends to let them know she's safe. Suddenly, a strange noise from the kitchen startles her, and she drops her phone. Meanwhile, Daichi, who had been unconscious, wakes up. As soon as he regains consciousness, he starts analyzing the incident. The killer not only knew where they were going, but also knew Yuriko's name, and the place they went to was specifically mentioned by Sato. So there is only one possible conclusion: the killer is most likely Sato. After receiving Haruka's message, Yuriko immediately calls her. At the same time, Sato suddenly attacks Haruka, who is about to answer the call, and she admits that she is the killer. Haruka seizes the chance to run toward the door, but Sato chases after her relentlessly. Soon, Haruka is cornered on the rooftop. Sato tells Haruka that the other personality inside her is weak and timid, even though she always wears a smile on her face. Deep down, she is in constant pain, so Sato has to come out herself to deal with all these problems. Only then does Haruka realize that Sato has a split personality. After saying this, Sato raises her weapon. Luckily, Yoshihisa arrives just in time and blocks the attack for Haruka, but Haruka gently opens her arms towards Sato, trying to awaken the kind, smiling Sato with compassion. Sato finally regains her sanity. At that moment, the others also arrive. Sato turns back and says goodbye to them. Then she goes to turn herself in. When Haruka returns home, she finds that her mother is there. Kumiko has always been harsh toward Haruka. She even complains that Haruka's cooking tastes terrible. Haruka silently endures all the hurtful things her mother says, but when her mother starts criticizing her friends, she can't hold back anymore. She loudly talks back to her. The person who once abandoned her has no right to judge her friends. The two begin to argue endlessly. In the end, they even grab pillows and start hitting each other. Finally, after knocking over the table, they both calm down. The knot in their hearts begins to loosen. After cleaning up, her mother falls asleep. Looking at her, Haruka recalls the moment she was abandoned in the past, but in the next moment, her mother is in tears. At last, Haruka forgives her. She lies in her mother's arms. At that moment, Haruka feels a happiness she has never known before.